this gardening in the South, we've been doing this for several years now, and it's really been incredibly successful. Like I said, almost 600 people today. The part of what makes this possible is the support of one of our sponsors, Leaf and Limb. Leaf and Limb is an arboriculture company here in Raleigh who, unlike most tree care services, which exist mainly to cut trees down and do other things alongside cutting trees down, Leaf and Limb is dedicated to saving trees, making them healthier, doing more to keep our green spaces green. So they've been supporting this because it's not just about trees, it's about the whole ecosystem. And the better we all are as gardeners, the better the health of the trees that they're looking at and the less they have to do. If we all had healthy trees, I think Leaf and Limb would love that, would love to put themselves out of business by having all the trees being as healthy as possible. And because of their really different approach to tree care, we've invited Basil Camu, who is the chief vision officer and wizard of all things at Leaf and Limb, to come talk about trees. And, he's going to talk about some real specific things that you can do to have healthier trees and a couple of things to avoid. He is an ISA board certified master arborist, which means nothing to a lot of people, but he is also the chief tree ecologist at Leaf and Limb. And I think we can all understand that. Basil came the traditional route into this by graduating magna cum laude from Duke with a double major in economics and history. He did actually put that degree to use as an economic analyst, but then switched careers to become an entrepreneur and really work at something he loves, which is saving the trees, the green spaces, the birds, the insects, the whole ecosystem that goes along with great ecosystems. So without further ado, let me introduce Basil Camu from Leaf and Limb to talk about how to make trees healthier.
Hello. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. And I'm very excited to be here. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And yes, indeed, I do actually, it's true. If we're doing our job really well at Leaf and Limb, we will eventually put ourselves out of business. And that would be amazing because that means we have a healthy planet. That's what we're after here at Leaf and Limb. We care for trees because we love this planet. And that the trees we have are so important to that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Bear with me 1 minute here. Got a PowerPoint presentation today. And today I want to talk about 4 ways to make your trees happy and 2 critical errors to avoid. And just briefly, I want to just sort of start at the big picture. So at Leaf and Limb, we care for trees because we love the planet. We connect the tree with the health of the planet. And that means that we approach tree care in a certain kind of way. Soil is a very big part of that, which y'all have all heard about soil now. I'll actually talk a little bit about that today. There's a lot of things we do, but anything we do, we're asking ourselves one fundamental question. Is this service creating a net positive gain for the trees, for the ecosystem, for the planet? We want to create net positive effects. So we don't want to spray a pesticide that's going to cause collateral damage to other populations. It's one of the reasons that we actually don't use chemicals at all. And Mark sort of hinted at this, but we did start off as a traditional tree service. And 2 years ago, or a little less, we actually quit cutting down live trees. It was a major step backwards for a year or 2, but we've bounced back. All of our services now are purely care. That's pruning, that's soil, that's care, that's planting. So that's a little bit about Leaf and Limb. Today, I want to start off with just a big picture. Why do trees even matter? Before we get started with some of the tips and tricks, why do they even matter? Well, in a nutshell, there's a lot changing here on planet Earth. And we're seeing things like we've lost 60% of all life species here on planet Earth in the last 40 years. Water is disappearing. Healthy topsoil is disappearing. There's a lot of things that are disappearing. And we know that trees can play a major role in helping fix many of those issues. For example, trees are one of the things that animals and birds and insects actually need to survive. So if we could bring back trees in greater number, we could help bring back species that are either endangered or under serious pressure right now. So that's a little bit of a big picture, why trees matter. And the tips I'm going to show you today, These are things that you can do that will not only help beautify your garden and make your property shine, but they're also going to do good for this planet, and they're going to do good for biodiversity and all these other things we've just talked about. So with that, 4 ways to make your trees happy. I want to start off with number 1. So when you're pruning, you should always have a goal. This is really important. And I would argue that structural pruning is the number 1 goal. And rather than me explain what that means to you, I'm going to pop over here and I want to show you a video that's all about structural pruning.
Here in the forest, trees compete for sunlight. And this means they grow tall, strong, and straight. But if left on their own, like this elm tree here, they often overgrow and end up hurting themselves in the long run. The answer is structural pruning. Hi, I'm Basil, and today we're talking about why we prune. It's the competition here in this forest that forces these trees to grow straight and tall. You'll notice they all have this general structure. They have a central, straight trunk and well-balanced branches. This is really important for a tree. It's this ideal structure that helps keep them healthy and prevent breaking. Structure is strength. If we take away the forest, then all of a sudden this lone tree has all of the sunlight it could possibly want. And that means it's going to grow every which way, and it loses that really important structure that we saw in the forest. So I'll show you a couple of examples here on this elm tree. First of all, you'll notice that it has 2 trunks. And between these 2 trunks, it has this seam. This is something that could very easily separate in a windstorm, especially as the tree gets older. And then if we look up in the canopy, we see all these large, overextended branches. It lacks the structure that we saw in the forest. And unfortunately for this tree, that means that it could split. If that happens, it could cause damage to property, it could hurt somebody, and it would almost certainly be the end of this tree's life. The solution is structural pruning, and ideally that begins with a young tree like this oak. But it's important for older trees as well. The idea is that we remove branches to create the structure we're looking for. The process takes many, many years because we can only remove so many branches at any given time. But when it's done, hopefully we've created a tree that looks much like the ones we saw in the forest. That means a straight central trunk and well-spaced branches. For us to live side by side with trees in our neighborhoods means that structural pruning is really important. It helps keep trees healthy, prevents them from breaking, and it keeps us safe. And with all the serious issues that are facing our planet today, we need as many healthy trees as we can get.
Alrighty, so when you're getting your tree pruned, remember, structure is strength. That is the key. We need structural pruning. It can help increase your tree's lifespan by hundreds of years. Oak pruned properly in the urban environment might last 500 years or more. So it's very important to think about structure when you're pruning. Another thing I see with pruning is not making proper cuts. But it's really important that you cut. There's only one place you can cut a branch, and it's called the branch collar. And let me show you a diagram. This is a diagram of how to make a proper pruning cut, and A is your first cut, B is your second cut, and C is your third cut. Really important to do this on all your pruning cuts. Trees will otherwise begin to hollow out, and you don't want a tree with a hollow. If you do a bad pruning cut, you might actually create a hollow point, and 10 or 20 years later, that could be a real problem. Maybe there's a hurricane or a thunderstorm, and that tree breaks. So it's very important to make the proper cut so that the tree can heal properly. Number 3, and this is my only other video in the lineup. I'm going to try the video again. Hopefully this works.
Here in the forest, the soil has everything it needs. And because of that, it can take care of the trees. It feeds this oak here, and this thing is super happy. Here's the kicker. Each year, this oak drops these leaves. This rotting stuff, this is soil food. And if we have this, we also have air and we have water. This is what keeps soil alive. I'm Basil, and today I'm here to talk about soil. It is alive, and I mean it's like really alive. It's like you and me. It needs oxygen, it needs water, it needs food. If it has these things, it's gonna feed your trees, it's gonna take care of your trees, they're gonna be healthy, they're gonna be happy. If it doesn't have these things, then you get this. This is what used to be a really beautiful old oak tree, and it is suffering right now. It's a sick tree, and let me show you why. Check this out. So I'm gonna use this screwdriver and I'm gonna try to push it into the ground. I want you to see how much I struggled to get this thing in. We're talking, oh my goodness, maybe 2 inches, if I'm lucky. That's definitely not full of air. You can just see this stuff. There's no water. And let me see if there's anything in here that looks like rotting food for soil. Nah, it's just more of the same. It's dry, it's super hard. There's no rotting stuff in here. This is sick dirt, which means we have a sick tree. Here's the exciting news. We can resurrect this dead dirt and turn it back into healthy soil by replicating what we see in the forest every day. So here I recommend that we put down lots and lots of wood chips, and then we let the leaves fall and rot every single year. That's gonna create this amazingness that's full of air and water and giving the soil that rotting stuff it needs to eat. That means we've got healthy, happy soil that can then feed the trees. Now we have healthy, happy trees. It's a win-win. And the best part is this. If we do this on a large scale, then we can restore the health of this planet that we call home. Soil's alive, and it's hungry. And so am I.
All right. So in a nutshell, the way that things happen in the world is that trees drop their leaves. And the reason they drop their leaves is that they want to feed all of the life that lives in the soil. And when they feed that life, then the life returns the favor and feeds the tree. So what we really want to focus on is feeding our soil. Like, think about having a dog or a child. You have to feed it, or them, or whatever that might be in your case, because that's one of the things that most of life on Earth needs. Water's another thing. Well, we get that through rainfall, luckily. So feed your soil, and let me show you some ways you can feed your soil. You can put down wood chips. So I've got on my screen here a big pile of nice free arborist wood chips. You can call any tree service and they will give these to you for free. If they tell you they're going to charge, tell them they're going to have to pay to dump them anyway, so they might as well give them to you for free. We also now here in North Carolina have this new website called chipdrop.com. You can go there and sign up, get free wood chips. This is a really fantastic way to feed your soil, but it's not the only way to feed your soil. I'd also recommend that you leave the leaves. So when those leaves fall every year, that's free carbon. Leave it there, let it rot in your soil and feed your soil. If you don't like how it looks, you can top dress it. You can sprinkle a little pine straw on top or put your favorite mulch on top. So you get business on the bottom, party on the top. Everybody's winning. And then also don't forget compost. Rather than putting your green waste by the street side, go get some free pallets from a nearby furniture store. You can make a little square by putting them upright. 4 angle irons. Now you've got a compost bin. Put all your food scraps, all your yard scraps, all this, anything green coming out of your house or your yard goes in there. And now you're just making compost that you can put back in the soil. If we can get healthy soils, we have healthy trees. It's really important. All right. My 4th tip on how to make your trees happy and how to help create happy ecosystems here in North Carolina and beyond. Plant native trees. I know you've probably heard this before. Probably most everybody here has read Doug Tallamy's books. I definitely recommend them. His latest one is Nature's Last Hope, which is really fantastic. It's all about native species. But In a nutshell, native trees and native shrubs and flowers support 35 times more life than a cultivar from Asia might support. So, we think about beauty and we think about sun requirements and we think about water requirements, and these things are all really important. But I'd also encourage you to think about ecological support. What are your plants doing to actually help the local ecosystem? There are many, many butterflies that rely on these native flowers and trees, many insects, caterpillars. We have over 100 native bees here in North Carolina. Really cool bees out there besides just your average honeybee. So all of these creatures need our native plants. I would encourage you, select native. Right here, I've got a page on our site. We've got some guides on native plants, lots of articles. And then one of my favorite tools for this, if you can see my screen, this is the Native Plant Finder. It was a collaboration between Doug Tallamy and the Forest Service, and you can just pick a zip code. I'm going to enter in the zip code here, and then you get all kinds of suggestions for flowers and grasses, trees and shrubs. And don't forget, NC State also has an amazing plant finder. So lots of tools out there on finding native plants. All right, now we're going to transition to critical errors to avoid. So number one, if you've seen this, we call it a mulch volcano. And because y'all are on the call, you probably already know what this is, but it's basically the idea of piling up mulch on the base of a tree. We really don't want to do this. This mulch will actually rot out the tree, cause all kinds of problems long-term. So you don't want to pile that mulch on the tree trunk. Mulch is very good. Like I said earlier, wood chips, leaves, all these things acting as mulch. Put them around your tree. Just don't pile them up around your trunk. And then number two, no fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides. In short, just stay away from all the sides. These are all short-term gain for long-term pain. I want to just walk you through a few things that might happen with these. So for example, most any fertilizer that you buy from Lowe's or your garden store is going to handicap your tree's root system, because it's basically, one of the tree's roots' primary function is to go find nitrogen. Well, when you pump nitrogen in the soil, it makes for a lazy root system. You may actually get an underdeveloped root system. Not to mention, it bypasses all that life in the soil that we were talking about, and we need that life. That's what makes for a really healthy plant. Some fertilizers even kill fungi under the soil. I don't want to get into too much detail here, but there's a special kind of fungi underneath the ground called mycorrhizal fungi, and it partners with your tree's root system, and it helps the roots find water during drought and find nutrients. And if we put pesticides in the ground, we can actually kill that off. So lots of reasons not to do it. But here's one of my favorite. This is an article from New York Times. I would recommend you check it out if you have time. It's called "The Insect Apocalypse is Here." And it's a look at how so many of the chemicals we use, herbicides and pesticides, are killing off insects to the point where scientists estimate we've lost about 60% of all insects on the planet. That's pretty serious. Insects are a foundational part of all of our ecosystems. They're a foundational part for our food chains, not just for humans, for all animals. So we really do need insects. And the cool thing, y'all, there's always great alternatives to all of this. If you're feeding your soil with leaves and compost and wood chips, you don't need fertilizers. And you probably don't need any pesticides because your trees are healthy and they're able to defend themselves against any major attack. All right, and we're going to transition to this final slide here. There's so much more to talk about. I wanted to keep this short and sweet. Let me just show you a couple of resources real quick. Our website, we have tons of fun articles about all the stuff we've talked about and more. One of my favorite is this article, How Trees Can Save Earth and What We Can Do to Help. This is a really cool piece. You can also join our newsletter here. You can become a treecologist, where we have a free online course if you're interested. And then here's my email if you'd like to email me. If you do Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, here are all the various handles. We'd love to have you along, and I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is really fantastic. What you talked about, it just took off exactly so much from where Bill was and leads so well into what Denacia is going to do.